Hello there, folks. Heartbreaking news, I'm afraid. Nadine Dorries was absent from her Friday night talk TV show, but the personality vacuum that is fellow Tory MP Jake Berry was a relatively able deputy. Goodness only knows of the whereabouts of Nadine Dorries. I'm reliably informed she did not attend Parliament. There is nothing on social media advertising her absence from her talk TV show, and I'd be grateful if any residents of Mid-Bedfordshire would let me know in the comments whether Nadine Dorries is even bothering with surgeries in her constituency. It is common knowledge she lives some 90 miles away in Gloucestershire, but her absence from now both places of work and her radio silence on social media would suggest to me she is on some kind of holiday. Now, briefly, I'll draw your attention to this LBC article, which covers a lot of what I mentioned about Nadine Dorries in a previous video. It's called Ridiculous. Campaigners slam Nadine Dorries, who raked in £145,000 despite not speaking in Parliament for a year. It's a good article. It covers her gross neglect as a Member of Parliament, and I'll leave a link for it in the description of this video. But now, onto the main subject of this video. Robert Buckland was the Justice Secretary under Boris Johnson, and he was invited onto Friday night with Jake Berry to discuss the horrifying statistic that 96% of burglaries result in no summon or no charge, and waffled for a good few minutes at what could be done to improve policing when it comes to burglary. But we will pick up the conversation after Buckland has stopped waffling relentlessly about what needs to be done instead of what should have been done over the past 13 years, and pick it up at the point where they start discussing the upcoming by-elections. Buckland here makes such a tit of himself, even Isabel Oakeshott bursts out laughing, and Kevin Maguire could barely believe his ears. Let's have a look.
Look, we've heard this week that there's likely to be another by-election caused by the Privileges Committee of finding they've made in relation to a Conservative Member of Parliament or ex-Conservative Member of Parliament. Do you think that we're going to hold these by-elections in the Conservative Party? Let's deal with them. It's a 20,000 almost majority in Tamworth. Is this going to be held by the Conservatives?
Well, they're going to be very tough tests, aren't they, for the government? And, if previous by-elections are anything to go by, it's going to be really difficult, I think.
It's a 20,000 majority Conservative seat. You've got 3,500 majority there or thereabouts. More than, sorry, I beg your pardon, I've got 9,500. 20,000 Conservative majority falling. Well, should you and I just give up then? I mean, what does it say about the government?
I certainly don't think that, Jake. I think what by-elections
I'm relieved to hear it.
What I think by-elections are very much a referendum by the public about their satisfaction or otherwise with the government. They're very different animals from general elections. Having been a by-election candidate myself many years ago, I know what it's like. And whilst I would never dismiss their importance, I do think that, when we get the dawn of the Liberal Democrats, for example, winning seats, they tend to be...
Well, I don't think the Liberal Democrats are going to win many, if any, of these seats. Well, I mean, Kevin... Look, we talked earlier about this sort of, 20,000 being almost the panic station point for Conservative MPs. Do you think is Robert right? Are these just by-election blips or?
Well, Robert, I think you're about 6,500, are you?
That's right.
I did him out of 3,000.
Yeah, you'd be swept away if there was an election now. Why should anybody, any voter, after you've been in power nearly 14 years, believe you're going to reform the police? You're going to get burglary taken seriously. The 19 out of 20 burglaries that nobody gets held to account for. Why will they think, after all these years you've been in power, that you're going to solve it now?
Because we were left with a baleful inheritance from the Labour Party.
Are you still blaming Labour? Are you seriously? Robert,
we went through years. We went through... Well,
you're not going to convince any jury with this line.
You can pick on me as much as you like, but I actually had the job of being in government for many, many years, and I can tell you that the amount of work that we had to do in the early years was immense. We then, of course, had the big decision on Brexit. We've had COVID, and I can tell you, certainly as far as I'm concerned, the reforms that we made in my department and across government have been significant. We need to tell the story better. And we also, as Tories, frankly, and here I take your point, Kevin, we need to do much better at sketching out what it is where we want the country to be in 2030. What's the vision for a Conservative Britain? I believe there's one out there. We need to start telling it, because I can tell you, watching Keir Starmer's speech this morning and seeing those yawning students shouldn't give anybody who's supporting Labour much confidence that they're going to inspire the country.
But Robert, are you seriously blaming Labour for burglars who go unprosecuted today?
After 13 years
I am saying that
government.
we were faced with huge decisions about the police early on in that government. We have, as a result of the election pledges in 2019, we've, of course, increased police numbers. We did see a decline, particularly in violent crime, in the last 10 or 15 years.
Well, burglaries are a record low.
Now relating to fraud, online crime, and indeed dwelling house burglary, I think, have to be reflected.
Isabel,
I'm actually feeling sorry for him, because there just isn't a good story to tell on anything, is there?
Don't feel sorry for me,
no,
Isabel.
I kind of do.
No, don't.
What, because
there
you've
are
got
loads
nothing
of
to say.
No, there are loads of positive stories to say about what the government have been doing.
What?
And well, first
give
of all,
me three examples of brilliant government achievements.
To begin with, education. Look at the standards that we've seen in schools, rising standards of literacy and numeracy that are pushing England certainly back up the table of competitiveness, which is where we need to be.
We on the table?
I think
Where
hold on, you wanted me to give me three examples.
I'll give you.
You can heft to me as much as you like. Let's have a reasonable conversation. We know that England has certainly moved up the PISA table of competitiveness with regards to literacy and numeracy, whereas Wales and Scotland, where the Tories have gone down.
Okay.
So you can criticise COVID as
we've got
much as you
education.
like. The government
Number two.
goes through the COVID crisis, and then I also think that when it comes to the changes that we've made with regard to criminal justice legislation, which I've been responsible for.
3 strikes you're out for burglars.
This is just embarrassing beyond belief. I feel that this perfectly summed up the mood the general public have for the Conservative Party. You can either laugh at how pathetic they are, or feel sorry for how pathetic they are. I didn't necessarily feel sorry for Buckland, but I certainly pity his pathetic attempts to blame the previous Labour government for the problems we face today. And their biggest achievement, he claims, is marginally, and it is very marginally, by the way, improving the literacy and numeracy of children. It's just a shame that instead of praising teachers for that, Tories spend most of their time calling hard-working teachers woke money grabbers who are filling the heads of their students with left-wing ideology. Anyway, we need change, and we need it fast. And hopefully 5 by-election defeats will spur the government into calling an early general election, because things aren't going to get any better for the Conservative Party. Interest rates will continue to rise. Inflation is a tough one to call. It's likely not going to get any better throughout the winter, so we may not see it come down to a reasonable level until spring of next year. Autumn might actually be the best time for the Tories to cut their losses, because if they think they're in for a hammering now, this time next year, when the financial outlook could be even more bleak, they could be in for one of the biggest thrashings of all time. Especially so if the Reform Party is fully organised with a full manifesto. And that point should not be underestimated. Reform will pinch many votes from the right wing of the Conservative Party. It's actually going to be quite glorious to see what happens to them next time. Really. It's going to be the most beautiful election night there has ever been. Just picture their faces. Gullis, Anderson, Clark Smith, Leah Nietzsche. The dole queue awaits. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to shunt me up that irritating algorithm. And I will talk to you again soon. See ya.